In this tutorial, we are going to discuss about comparison operators in Python. We also call them as relational operators because they basically check the relationship between two operands. So we have 6 comparison operators or relational operators in Python. They are equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And here these A and B are called operands. Now what these comparison operators do is they compare the values of two operands like A and B in this case and return true or false. If the relationship holds true, they will return true. If not, they will return false. For example, let's see equal to operator here, which is represented by this double equals. And one thing we have to note here is when we use a single equals like a is equal to 5, this is called assignment. Here we are assigning a value 5 to variable a. But if you want to check the equality between two operands, we have to use double equal symbol. So here what this equal to operator does is it will return true if the relationship holds true, which means if value of a is equal to value of b, it will return true or else it will return false. Now, when it comes to not equal to operator, this is exactly reverse. It checks if value of A is not equal to value of B. If they are not equal, it will return true or else it will return false. Similarly, we have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So these operators evaluate the relationship, and if the relationship holds true, they will return true or else they will return false. Now we call all these expressions as Boolean expressions because they return a Boolean value, which means true or false. Now let's see some examples. So here we have 10 equal to 10. So when we write these kind of expressions, it's just like asking Python a question that is the relationship true. So here it's like asking is 10 equal to 10 and Python will say true or false. So here 10 is clearly equal to 10. So Python will return true. Now here is 30 equal to 50? No, it is not, right? So Python will say false. Here we have not equal to operator. So is 30 not equal to 50? Yes, it is, right? In fact, 30 is not equal to 50. It sounds very obvious when I say it, right? So Python will return true. Next we have 50 not equal to 50. It is not correct, right? 50 is in fact equal to 50. So it will return false. Here we have 80 greater than or equal to 80, which is correct. So it will return true. Now here we're comparing two float values, 10.5 and 20.2. So 10.5 less than 20.2, this is correct, right? So it will return true. Now let's see a couple of interesting examples related to strings. So here we are comparing two strings, hello and hello. But as you can see here in this particular string, we have all letters in uppercase. But here some of the letters are in lowercase. So one important point we need to understand about strings is that strings are case sensitive, which means uppercase characters are not considered equal to lowercase characters. So these two strings are not considered equal. That's why equal to operation will say false. Now, if you see the next example, here we're comparing two strings ABC and ABC. We have the same letters and also the case of the letters is also same. So these two are considered equal. That's why Python will return true. Now let's put these examples in a Python program so that we can run and verify the results. So let's go to our operators folder and you can right click, select new Python file. So I will create a Python file comparison operators. In fact, what we can do here is when we have the file name which comprises of multiple words, we can put an underscore between them so that the name is much more readable. The convention we need to follow while creating Python files is that the file name should be all in lowercase. And if you have multiple words, we can separate those words with underscores so that, it is much more readable. So now if you press enter, it will create that Python file for us. Let's also rename the files we created for arithmetic operators and bitwise operators. So the way we can rename is we can click on that file, right click, select refactor, and here you will have an option to rename and put an underscore between arithmetic and operators. So now you can click refactor. So the file name will be changed as you can see here. Similarly, let's also do it for bitwise operators. So let's separate it with underscore and click refactor. So here are the examples we discussed, and I'm pre-writing this code because if I write this code live, it will unnecessarily take a lot of time. And anyway, you can access all this code from the code repository or from the website, right? Okay, now let's run this program. So right click, run comparison operators, and you can see the output here. Let me expand this console. You can see output of all these expressions and you can verify that they're exactly same as what we discussed before. Now, in all these examples, we have seen what happens when we compare values of same data types. For example, here we're comparing two integers. Here we're comparing two floats. Here we're comparing two strings. But what happens when we compare values of different data types? Will Python even allow it? Let's try to understand. The first thing is Python allows using equal to and not equal to operators between different data types. Let's see some examples to understand this statement even better. Now, if you see in this example, we have an integer value 10 equal to float value 10.0. Now, even if these two values are of different data types, which are int and float, still both are numerical values, right? And so the values are comparable. So here this value 10 is quantitatively equal to value 10.0. So Python will consider these two values as equal. So equal to operator will return true. Now if you see this example, even here we have an integer value 10 equal to float value 7.5. So both are numerical values and so the values are comparable. But 10 is not quantitatively equal to 7.5, right? So these two values are not considered equal. So it will return false. So when we compare an integer value with a float value, both values are comparable, which means if both values are quantitatively equal, like let's say 10, 10.0, 7, 7.0, then values are considered equal by Python. If not, the values are not considered equal, just like in this case. Now let's see these three examples involving strings. Here we have a string value 10 equal to integer value 10. When we put something inside double quotes, right, it is considered a string. Now, when you put 10 inside it, it is nothing but a string, which is sequence of characters 1 and 0. It is no longer a number. We can compare two numerical values, but we can't compare a string with a numerical value, right? So that's why strings are not comparable to numerical values. And so values are considered not equal. So here, when you say it, you might get an impression that values might be equal. They are actually not because strings are not comparable to numerical values. So they are not equal at all. So this will return false. Even here we have the same values, but instead of equal to, we have not equal to operator. Not equal to operator is exactly reverse, right? If values are not considered equal, then it will return true. So string 10 is not considered equal to integer 10, so it will return true. Now here we are comparing string 10.0 with a float 10.0. Both values are not comparable, right? So they are not considered equal. So when we perform equal to, it will return false. So I have added all these examples in the Python program. First, let's try to run this. Right click, run comparison operators. And as you can see, we got the same output as we discussed. Now, as you can see here, even if here integer 10 and float 10.0 are of different data types, both are numerical values, right? So they are comparable and 10 is quantitatively equal to 10.0 and so these are considered equal. So it will return true. Now here, even if 10 and 7.5 are comparable as both are numerical values, but still these are not quantitatively equal, right? So obviously equal to operation will return false. And in all the remaining examples, we are comparing a string value with a numerical value, and these values are not considered equal, right? So we got the same outputs as we discussed. So we have seen that equal to and not equal to operators are allowed between different data types. But when it comes to ordered comparisons like greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, these are only allowed between compatible data types. First of all, what do we mean by ordered comparisons? When we use these greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, we are basically checking if something is greater than or something is less than the other, right? In a way, we are basically checking the order of different values. That's why these are called ordered comparisons. Now, these ordered comparisons are only allowed between compatible data types. What do we mean by compatible data types? Let's see about it. So float and int are compatible data types as both represent numerical values, right? Both represent numbers. So they are considered compatible. Now, string and int or string and float are not compatible. Strings represent some sequence of characters. Int and float, they represent numbers. So string is not compatible with int or float. If you see these examples, here we are checking if int 20 is less than float 10.6. Int and float are compatible, right? So quantitatively, we can say if something is greater than the other or something is less than the other. But here 20 is not less than 10.6, right? So this becomes false, but Python allows this comparison. Now, if you come to the next example, here we have string 20 greater than 5. So strings are not compatible with numerical data types, ints and floats. So Python will not even allow it. That means we'll get a type error. Type error indicates that you are doing some operation with incompatible data types. Similarly, in the next example, we have float 7.5 less than or equal to string 100. So even here we have a string and float, which are not compatible. So even here you will get a type error. When it comes to equal to and not equal to operators, Python allows using these operators between strings and int or strings and float. Python allows it, but it's just that because strings are not comparable to numerical values, values are considered not equal, but Python still allows writing these expressions. If you see here, when you wrote 10 string 10 equal to integer 10, because values are not considered equal, it will return false. But if you see in this case, Python will not even allow it, which means Python will throw an error. It's not about true or false here. I hope you understood this difference. And now I have added all those examples to the program. First, let's try to run this program and see what happens, right? Right click, run, and we can see that there is a type error and it says greater than operation is not supported between instances of string and int, right? So this is where we got the error. And even here, if you scroll to the right, we can see the error happened in line 23. If you go to line 23, here we are doing an ordered comparison between string and int, right? So this is not allowed in Python. That's why it throws a type error. Now, one thing to note here is that when we run the program, Python executes the program line by line, right? Which means it starts execution from line 1. So it executes line by line. And when it comes to line 23, it finds out there is some issue and it will stop the execution and throw type error. So all the lines above line 23 are executed. Even if you see in the console, we can see the outputs are all printed. Now, when it comes to line 23, it finds out there is an issue and it stops the execution, which means it will not execute the rest of the program as well, right? So now because we are having an error here, let's just comment it out. Now let's try to run this program again. Right click, run comparison operators, and we can see again we got a type error. Less than or equal to operation is not supported between instances of float and str. And this happened at line 24. If we see here, we are doing an ordered comparison of a float value with a string value, which is also not allowed. That's why it throws again type error. So let's also comment this line. Now if you try to run this program, we can see that program is executed successfully without any errors. I hope that with this you understood how to use comparison operators in Python. In the next video, let's discuss some more advanced concepts related to comparison operators. I'll see you there.